Just weeks before Election Day, the Walsh administration is asking City Hall staffers to volunteer for a day of service to knock on doors of elderly Boston residents and provide them with information about city services. The city's chief of civic engagement, Jerome Smith, sent out an email blast yesterday looking for volunteers for what's being billed as Project Connect the Knox, a day-long blitz of targeted seniors, many of whom will be headed to the voting booth on November 7th. Mayor Martin J. Walsh is slated to kick off the ambitious project next Friday in Mattapan in what amounts to a helpful bit of pre-election promotion showcasing the power of City Hall. Following a brief training, volunteers will head out in teams to knock on the doors of the households we've identified, conduct a brief survey and distribute information on available resources, Smith said in the email, obtained by the Herald. It will be a busy morning starting at 8 a.m. Food will be provided as a thank you to our wonderful volunteers, the email states. The volunteers will be allowed to take a day off the regular City Hall jobs in what city officials call an important day of service. All city workers must get permission from the bosses to participate. The project is not an official campaign event, it's paid for by city taxpayers. But the targeted door-knocking effort, similar to voter canvassing that takes place in political campaigns, could provide Walsh with some feel-good publicity just 2.5 weeks before voters go to the polls. Walsh has not been shy about using the powers of his incumbency in his race against City Councillor Tito Jackson. The mayor has kept up a full schedule of official events, up to 4 or 5 per day, while doing little actual campaigning, the Herald reported earlier this week. Officials say the project is part of the city's age-friendly action plan put out in May. The plan aims to engage potentially isolated elderly residents who may not be aware of city services, such as information on property tax relief, tax credits, home repairs, elderly commission programs, sewer and water discounts and a program for replacement of inefficient furnaces. Mattapan was picked for the launch of the project because it has a heavy Gov. Jerry Brown signed a law Saturday that will remove the rights of school administrators to decide whether employees with concealed weapon permits can bring guns on campus. State law already prohibited civilians who are not school workers from bringing firearms onto campuses, but a change in the law last year gave school district superintendents power to decide if employees could bring concealed weapons onto campuses, according to Assemblyman Kevin McCarthy D. Sacramento, who authored the bill. 5 California school districts, including the Kingsburg Joint Union and Kern school districts, have begun to issue authorization for some school employees to bring guns on campuses, McCarthy said. He said it has increased the chance of school shootings. A safe learning environment is essential for our children to be successful in the classroom, McCarthy said. That's not possible if a school district allows armed civilians to roam California school campuses. The measure AB 424 was opposed by groups advocating for gun owners, including the National Rifle Association and the Firearms Policy Coalition, which noted that there have been no shootings involving California school employees who brought guns to campuses. The constitutional right to bear arms is based on the fundamental human right to self-defense, the coalition wrote to lawmakers. AB 424 undermines these very important principles based on little more than a whim. Under separate legislation signed by Brown on Saturday, Californians who are convicted of hate crimes will be banned from possessing firearms for 10 years. Assemblyman Reginald John S. Sawyer Sr., D. Los Angeles introduced the legislation, AB 785. He recently cited the August violence in Charlottesville, VA, as justification for expanding the gun ban to those who commit hate crimes. The recent incident in Charlottesville, where heavily armed neo-Nazis, Klansmen and white supremacists spewing hatred and inciting violence under the guise of protecting free speech and the right to bear arms, is not what the founding fathers of this great nation were protecting when they drafted our Constitution, John S. Sawyer said. Misdemeanor hate crimes that will fall under the firearm ban include using force or the threat of force to interfere with another person's free exercise of any constitutional right because of the other person's race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Gun possession will also be banned for people who deface or damage property in order to interfere with constitutional rights. For example, Sonoma, California fire authorities said Sunday they have turned a corner in battling several of the wildfires that have devastated wine country and other rural parts of Northern California over the past week. Some counties were preparing to let more evacuees return to their homes amid improving weather. The winds that have been fanning the deadliest and most destructive cluster of wildfires in California history did not kick up overnight as much as feared. Conditions have drastically changed from just 24 hours ago, and that is definitely a very good sign. And it's probably a sign we've turned a corner on these fires, said Daniel Berlant, spokesman for California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. We're starting to see fires with containment numbers in the 50 and 60%, so we're definitely getting the upper hand on these fires. The wildfires that erupted last weekend have killed at least 40 people and destroyed at least 5,700 homes and other structures. As of Sunday, roughly 75,000 people were under evacuation orders, down from nearly 100,000 the day before. On Sunday, the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office said the county would start assessing evacuated areas, which is a first step toward allowing people back home. Mendocino County said it expected to allow even more people home on Sunday as well. Some people were growing increasingly impatient to return home, or at least see whether the homes were still standing. We're on pins and needles, Travis Oglesby, who evacuated from his home in Santa Rosa, told the Sonoma County Sheriff on Saturday. We're hearing about looting. Douglas and Marion Taylor stood outside their apartment complex Saturday in Santa Rosa with the two dogs and a sign that read "End Evacuation Now." The building at the edge of the cordoned-off evacuation zone was unharmed. The couple said they're spending about $300 a day staying at a motel and eating out, and they want to return home because the fire does not appear to threaten them. Hundreds of people remain unaccounted for, though officials said they believe they will locate most of them alive. Most of the dead are believed to have died late on October 8 or early October 9 when the fires exploded and took people by surprise in the middle of the night. Most of the victims were elderly. In all, 17 large fires still burned across the northern part of the state, with more than 10,000 firefighters attacking the flames using air tankers, helicopters and more than 1,000 fire engines. What did NBC News know, and when did it know it? After Harvey Weinstein and Ben Affleck, no one's looking worse in this Hollywood sex scandal than NBC News. They had the Weinstein story cold and first, but they spiked it to protect their fellow traveler, the gross 300-pound Democrat Schlockmeister. I know you are saddened and angry, as Ben Affleck would put it, by this news. After all, this is the same very ethical network that has employed, or continues to employ, such extinguished journalists as Brian Williams, the Rev. Al Sharpton, Low IQ Mika, Comrade Chris Matthews, F. Chuck Todd, Chelsea Clinton and Joe Deliverance Scarborough, as well as the noted fiction writer Mike Barnicle. When the news breaks, they fix it. If it's news to you, it's news to them. The Peacock Network has gone chicken. NBC News has always had a soft spot for millionaire Democrats accused of rape. Almost 20 years ago, they had the first on-camera interview with Juanita Broaddrick, who credibly accused Bill Clinton of raping her, but that story was spiked on orders of Brian Williams. We already knew that Saturday Night Live's producer Lorne Michaels last weekend gave a pass to his dear friend Weinstein. That's how corrupt the entertainment side of NBC is. But now it turns out that Ronan Farrow begged NBC News to run his expose, which has since been printed by The New Yorker. NBC is the same outfit that for 11 years sat on Donald Trump's conversations with Billy Bush until he became a Republican, after which they used it to try to destroy his candidacy. As bad as the Times story about Weinstein was, Farrow's magazine piece was worse. Farrow had NYPD audio of Weinstein admitting to sexually assaulting a 21-year-old Italian model. And he had video of actress Rose McGowan accusing Harvey of raping her. Imagine that, a big-time Democratic donor to such moral titans as Bill Clinton, Al Gore, John Edwards, 3 members of the Kennedy family and Eliot Spitzer, accused of sexually abusing a woman. But NBC adamantly refused to run the piece because, well, reread the above paragraph. In fact, the Huffington Post reported, NBC ordered Ronan Farrow, who was then under contract, to stop reporting the story. NBC tried to put a stop to the interview with the woman accusing Weinstein of rape, the website said. The network insisted he not use an NBC News crew for the interview, and neither was he to mention his NBC News affiliation. Here's one ex-Feinstein employee, Tina Brown, describing how Harvey always kept corrupt outlet journalists from outing him. It was startling and professionally mortifying to discover how many hacks were on the Miramax payroll with a consultancy. Sen. Bob Corker escalated his war of words with the White House on Friday, admonishing President Donald Trump for what the senator called an effort to castrate the Secretary of State and actions that are pushing U.S. diplomatic efforts to the brink of World War III. Corker, Tennessee, who publicly laid into Trump earlier this week on Twitter by saying the White House had become an adult daycare center, slammed the president by saying he was undermining Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and creating scenarios in which the United States might be forced to choose between waging war on North Korea or Iran or allowing those countries to threaten the U.S. with nuclear weapons. Story continued below. You cannot publicly castrate your own Secretary of State without giving yourself the binary choice, Corker told The Washington Post in an interview Friday. He added that it was the undercutting of Tillerson that he was most exercised about. According to Corker, the secretary was in fact one of Trump's greatest assets and had made strides toward improving relationships with other global powers, notably China. The greatest diplomatic activities we have are with China, and the most important, and they have come a long, long way, he said. Some of the things we are talking about are phenomenal. By signing up you agree to receive email newsletters or alerts from Politico. You can unsubscribe at any time. The comments from the White House, including the assertion that Tillerson was wasting his time by seeking a diplomatic route with North Korea, hampered efforts to build up U.S. foreign policy, Corker said. When you jack the legs out from under your chief diplomat, you cause all that to fall apart, he said. U.S. working with Beijing effectively is the key to not getting to a binary choice. When you publicly castrate your Secretary of State, you take that off the table. Corker has been outspoken in his support of numerous top administration officials, while continuing to clash with the president himself. Last Wednesday, Corker told reporters that Tillerson, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis and Chief of Staff John Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos, a comment that angered Trump and drew a rebuttal from the White House. Trump fired back on Twitter, saying that Corker, who is retiring next year, had begged for his endorsement before declining to run for re-election. He also wanted to be Secretary of State. I said no thanks. He is also largely responsible for the horrendous Iran deal, Trump added. The comments set off a chain of insults flung back and forth that prompted groans from congressional Republicans, who were facing uphill battles to pass major A man in Lehigh, Florida, drove up to a bridge over a canal, got out of his car, checked the distance to the other side about 20 feet and decided to try to jump over it with his car. He didn't make it. A witness said he thought the man was misbehaving or under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Rule number 1. Don't get caught. Before robbing a bank in Largard, Florida, a man Googled how to rob a bank. He was arrested a short time later. Well, congratulations, Pinhead. A 46-year-old man who led Iowa State troopers on a 15-minute car chase told them he wanted to be chased because it was on his bucket list. He was arrested. Look, officer, I can vouch for him. Police arrested a man in a stolen car immediately after he drove away from his house in Eagle River, Alaska. A short time later, another man who was living there pulled over on a stolen motorcycle, mind you, and asked police why they had stopped his roommate. They arrested him, too. What makes you think I would do such a thing? When police in Lilburn Guard came to the home of a 66-year-old woman to arrest her for making threats against a state court judge, she attacked them with a flaming broom. Well, we'd better get out of here, I guess. A man called in a bomb threat to a Pittsburgh restaurant in an effort to get out of paying his bill. I am shocked that you were eavesdropping. Washington State Patrol officers found semi-automatic rifles in the trunk of the car of a convicted felon they had taken into custody. They looked for the guns after listening to jailhouse phone calls he made to his son, during which he asked him to retrieve the weapons so he wouldn't get in trouble. ISNT everybody at our service. A British couple on vacation in the Greek island of Rhodes were stopped when they walked out of a restaurant without paying. They explained that they had signed up for an all-inclusive stay at a nearby resort, and they thought that it meant that they could eat and drink for free anywhere on the island. plus anyone inside WOULD to be a suspect. Police pulled over for a vehicle check after spotting a black Hummer with a casket on its roof parked on the side of the interstate in Little Rock, Ark. Donald Jenkins, Jr., Pennsylvania State Police Shaft. Part police in Pennsylvania are searching for a man accused of shooting his daughter's boyfriend in the groin after an argument at a motel. Troopers say the shooting happened Sunday afternoon at the Motel 6 in West Mahanoy Township. Police have an arrest warrant for 40-year-old Donald Jenkins, Jr. on charges including attempted homicide, burglary and aggravated assault. Police say Jenkins' daughter and her boyfriend were staying at the motel. Police say when Jenkins arrived, they argued and Jenkins shot the boyfriend in the upper left leg and groin. The victim was treated at a hospital. Police say hundreds of people were killed when a truck bomb exploded in the Somali capital of Mogadishu on October 14, marking the deadliest single attack the country has experienced. The government is blaming an al-Qaeda-linked extremist group, Al-Shabaab, which has not yet claimed responsibility. Getty Images up next 24. Suicide on campus is an unfortunate reality at colleges nationwide, and the Bay State's highest court is poised to consider whether schools can be liable when a student decides to end his or her own life. The Supreme Judicial Court's hearing next month stems from the death of Han Nguyen, a former MIT student who committed suicide June 2, 2009, according to court documents. Nguyen jumped off a building after receiving a call from Birger Wernerfeld, a professor at the MIT Sloan School of Management, during which he read him the riot act for an email Nguyen sent to a colleague, court documents show. Nguyen's family hit the school and other MIT employees with a wrongful death claim, arguing that based on previous dealings with Nguyen, the school and its employees knew he was a suicide risk and had a duty to protect him. The lawsuit, filed by attorney Jeffrey S. Beeler, relies on the argument that MIT, and all institutions of higher learning, have a duty to protect students from foreseeable harm. That idea had schools across the state bristling, and 18 signed on to an amicus brief supporting MIT in its pitch to throw the lawsuit out. The controversial case is slated for arguments November 7. Courts in Massachusetts and other jurisdictions have determined that there is no special relationship between universities and students such that universities owe a duty to constantly supervise and prevent their students from engaging in self-injurious or risky behavior. The brief, filed by attorney Alan D. Rose, states. The schools, including Boston University and Amherst College, argue the SJC should place the burden of preventing someone's suicide on the professors and other non-clinicians. MIT, represented by megafirm Goodwin Procter, is making similar arguments. Every other state Supreme Court that has considered the relationship between universities and their students has held that there is no legal duty to prevent suicide, attorneys for MIT wrote. This court should not be the first to recognize such a duty. Attorneys for MIT and the 18 universities declined to comment. Beeler, citing a personal issue, indicated that he would let his filings speak for him and his clients. In a reply to briefs filed by MIT and the other universities, Beeler indicated that he is not trying to create new law, writing, "The plaintiff is merely seeking Los Angeles, in a move virtually unprecedented. Disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's membership in the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was revoked Saturday by its board. The decision was reached in an emergency session by the Academy, the world's top movie organization and home to the Oscars. The expulsion was effective immediately. It comes after recent reports by the New York Times and the New Yorker about sexual harassment and rape allegations against Weinstein going back decades. He has denied the accusations against him. In issuing its decision, the Academy stated, "We decide not simply to separate ourselves from someone who does not merit the respect of his colleagues, but also to send a message that the era of willful ignorance and shameful complicity in sexually predatory behavior and workplace harassment in our industry is over. What's at issue here," the statement added, "is a deeply troubling problem that has no place in our society." The statement said the decision was reached by well in excess of the required 2/3 majority of the 54-member Academy Board. Only one person is thought to have been previously expelled from the Academy: Carmine Corradi, a character actor who had his membership revoked in 2004 for lending DVD screeners of films in contention for Oscars that ended up online. The Academy's swift and severe ruling against Weinstein may raise questions about other Academy members who remain in good standing. These include Roman Polanski, an Oscar winner who in the 1970s pleaded guilty to drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl, and entertainer Bill Cosby, who has faced dozens of allegations of sexual assault. Weinstein, himself an Oscar winner, is a producer of the 1998 Best Picture Shakespeare in Love, was ousted a week ago from the Weinstein Co., the movie and TV production company he co-founded with his brother Bob and which now is struggling to survive the scandal. In an interview published Saturday by The Hollywood Reporter, Bob Weinstein called for his sick and depraved brother to be kicked out of the Academy. Speaking more broadly, Bob Weinstein added, "I want him to get the justice that he deserves." On Wednesday, Harvey Weinstein's membership in the British Academy of Film and Television Arts was revoked. In a related development, British actress Lysette Anthony says she has told police that Weinstein raped her in London in the 1980s. It was reported this week that London police were investigating a rape allegation against the producer relating to an incident in the 80s. The city's Metropolitan Police confirmed it was investigating a sexual assault allegation from the decade, without identifying Weinstein by name. Anthony, who currently appears in the soap opera Hollyoaks, told the Sunday Times newspaper that Weinstein raped former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus was interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller's team on Friday, according to his lawyer, William Burke. Mr. Priebus was voluntarily interviewed by special counsel Mueller's team today. He was happy to answer all of their questions, Burke said. Story continued below. The interview, which took place at the special counsel's office, was expected as part of Mueller's sprawling Russia-related investigation. Priebus had been preparing for several weeks, according to people who spoke with him. Priebus didn't immediately respond to a request for comment Friday afternoon. Mueller's team is expected to interview a number of other current and former White House aides, including former Press Secretary Sean Spicer, current Chief Counsel Don McGahn, and Communications Director Hope Hicks. By signing up, you agree to receive email newsletters or alerts from Politico. You can unsubscribe at any time. Mueller's team is interested in a number of actions Trump took in office, including the abrupt firing of FBI Director James Comey, a misleading statement written on Air Force One about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Kremlin-linked lawyer during the campaign, and meetings Trump held as president with Russians, including former Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing. The forthcoming interviews are part of a wide-ranging investigation that is looking at Russian meddling in the election and the business dealings of former campaign chairman Paul Manafort and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, among other matters. Priebus is seen as a key player in understanding the president's actions because he was present for many meetings, including discussions on firing Comey and White House meetings with Russian officials. He also was privy to White House internal documents. The former Republican National Committee chairman also had private conversations with Comey and other law enforcement officials as White House Chief of Staff and was near the Oval Office when Trump allegedly asked Comey to go easy on Flynn. Priebus also played a key role on the presidential campaign and spent thousands of hours with Trump. Trump allies have been particularly concerned about Priebus, several officials and advisors said, because he was often the target of sharp 822 p.m. played soon as rebound from a loss to Iowa State to knock off the Longhorns 2,924 in the Red River Showdown. Dallas on the final snap that really mattered in the 112th Red River Showdown. Ogbonnia Okoronkwo chased Texas quarterback Sam Ehlinger every which way before forcing him to surrender on fourth down with a pass into the sideline. At the other end of the play, Sooners safety Stephen Parker ran back and forth, making sure no Longhorns receiver broke free in the end zone. At the end of the tiring sequence, after which less than 2 minutes remained in Saturday's fourth quarter, Okoronkwo had nothing left to give, and was flat on his back before being gingerly pulled up by trainers and teammate Caleb Kelly. Parker had nothing left either. After re-aggravating his injured ankle, he had to be helped off the field as well. Baker Mayfield threw 2 touchdowns Saturday, the second of which stood up as the winner from the Sooners against Texas. Tim Heitman, USA Today Sports. After being gashed, then condemned in the wake of last week's stunning loss to Iowa State, Oklahoma's beleaguered defense delivered a valiant effort Saturday in the Cotton Bowl, getting the winning stop it needed as the number 12 Sooners held off Erlinger while holding on for a 2,924 victory loaded with fourth-quarter theater. Oklahoma's effort was hardly a work of art. After falling behind 200, Erlinger had the Sooners 51-21 Big 12 on the heels for much of the second half before his 8-yard carry gave Texas a stunning 2,423 lead. But on a weekend in which Clemson, Washington State and Auburn went down, the Sooners escaped Dallas with the Big 12 title and college football playoff hopes intact. Quarterback Baker Mayfield was the story for the Sooners early as he torched Texas for 179 yards through the air in the first quarter alone. But with the Oklahoma offense cooling off in the second half for the second consecutive week, the Sooners had to beat Texas with one big Mayfield touchdown. And with a key defensive stop that eluded them last week. After the Longhorns 33-21 took the late lead, Mayfield answered with a 59-yard touchdown pass on a wheel route to tight end Mark Andrews, who went uncovered against a busted Texas coverage. Texas, however, would go away. Neither would Erlinger, after leaving the game for 5 plays following a shot he took from Okoronkwo near the sidelines. Erlinger returned on 2-non-22 from the Philadelphia Eagles 41 led by quarterback Carson Wentz, wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey and tight end Zach Ertz meet the Carolina Panthers 41 in NFL Week 6 action on Thursday, October 12, 2017, 101,217 at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Panthers, coming off a win over the Detroit Lions, and sit atop the NFC South standings, are led by quarterback Cam Newton, rookie running back Christian McCaffrey, and linebacker Luke Kuechly. We'll have up-to-the-minute scoring and stats here throughout the game. Check the scoreboard above and click on the stats link. App users for the best mobile experience, use the mobile web version. Here's everything you need to know about Thursday night's game. Who Philadelphia Eagles at Carolina Panthers when Thursday, October 12, 2017, where Bank of America Stadium, Charlotte, North Carolina. Kickoff 8:25 p.m. Eastern. TV CBS NFL Network announces Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson. Sideline reporter. Local radio. Sports Radio 94.1 FM WIP announces Merrill Reese, Mike Wick, Howard Eskin. Sideline reporter. National Radio Westwood One Sports announces Ian Eagle, Tony Boselli. Livestream Amazon Prime. Line Panthers 3 Eagles Spanners. Key matchups Thursday night's game against Newton, McCaffrey, and the Panthers, who are 41 for the first time since 2015, represents one of the toughest tests on the Eagles' schedule, and could carry significant playoff implications. Playing a game on only 4 days rest is always a challenge, but the Eagles could be forced to start second-year swing tackle Halapoulivaati Vaitai in place of Lane Johnson, who has never missed a game due to injury, while Johnson may be forced to sit at Thursday's game. There is a chance that All-Pro defensive tackle Fletcher Cox could return after missing the last 2 games with a calf injury suffered in Week 3 against the Giants. Regardless of health, Eagles head coach Doug Peterson acknowledged the unique challenges of playing on Thursday night. "It's tough," Peterson said. "The players really don't get any days off, any time off. We're back to work this afternoon, with meetings, with practice, and same thing again tomorrow. This is typically the time to rest and recover, and they don't really have it this week. The balance is getting our work done on the field, and at the same time, allowing them to rest their legs, rest their bodies and do what they can to be prepared, and then the travel. The benefit of this week is we get 104 a.m. at play." Cam Newton records 3 interceptions as Carson Wentz throws for 3 touchdowns and 222 yards to lead the Eagles to a 2,823 victory. Charlotte, North Carolina. The Philadelphia Eagles' legitimacy as contenders was in question thanks to the quality of their opponents over the first quarter plus of the season. They had won 4 of the first 5 games heading into Thursday night. but 3 of those victories came against the New York Giants, Los Angeles Chargers and Arizona Cardinals, who have a combined record of 312. The Eagles should be questioned no more after going on the road to beat the Carolina Panthers 2,823 on short rest Thursday night to become the first team in the NFC to 5 wins. Carson Wentz threw 3 touchdowns without a pick Thursday as the Eagles improved to 51. App photo Mike McCarnidle until Monday, October 23, when Philadelphia hosts the Washington Redskins. The Eagles get to kick back for the weekend and enjoy the view from the top while the rest of the conference works to catch up. The Eagles' previous 4 victories came against teams that are combined 514, none of which currently has a winning record. The 50 Kansas City Chiefs beat the Eagles. On Thursday, the Eagles erased doubts they may be a product of a favorable schedule with a gutty performance against a physical, first-place Panthers team coming off wins over the New England Patriots and Detroit Lions. Operating without right tackle Lane Johnson concussion and third down back Wendell Smallwood, Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz was hit often 3 sacks, 8 QB hits and was a bit erratic early as the offense fought to find a rhythm. But the second-year signal caller came up with some huge third-down throws, a season-long trend, and finished with 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in a big-time showing on the national stage. Tight end Zach Ertz was on the receiving end of 2 of those scores. He now has 4 touchdowns on the season, matching a career-high statistics scoreboard 2017 schedule results standings. Eagles defensive tackle Fletcher Cox returned after missing the previous 2 games with a calf injury and made his presence felt. He bulldozed through guard Try Turner to hit Panthers QB Cam Newton mid-throw and force a first-half interception that led to 6 points. Cox finished with 2 quarterback hits and a half sack. Eagles defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz and his players had their hands full with the Panthers' multifaceted attack featuring Newton, rookie running back Christian McCaffrey and a pair of imposing receivers in Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess. The key was generating 3 takeaways, all Newton interceptions. The Eagles, New York, the brother of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein and co-founder of the company that now finds itself in crisis, says HES in a waking nightmare and had no idea the type of predator his brother is accused of being. "I want him to get the justice he deserves," Bob Weinstein said. Bob, 62, operated in the shadow of his much more public and flamboyant older brother for more than 30 years as they partnered in Miramax and, more recently, The Weinstein Co. But in an interview published Saturday by The Hollywood Reporter, he said that he and Harvey, 65, have barely spoken in 5 years. The brothers ran separate divisions of the company, from opposite coasts, Bob in Los Angeles, Harvey in New York. "The members of the board, including myself, did not know the extent of my brother's actions," Weinstein said in the interview. He said he knew his brother was unfaithful to wife Georgina Chapman, philandering with every woman he could meet. But he insisted he had no idea his brother was allegedly committing acts of sexual harassment and assault. "I'll tell you what I did know. Harvey was a bully. Harvey was arrogant. He treated people like crap all the time," Bob said. "I'm mortified and disgusted by my brother's actions. And I'm sick for the victims. And I feel for them." Dozens of women, including actresses Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow, have gone public with accusations against Harvey following recent reports by the New York Times and the New Yorker detailing misconduct claims by others. In the latest development, British actress Lysette Anthony said SHES told police that Harvey raped her in the 1980s. Anthony, who currently appears in the British soap opera Hollyoaks, told the Sunday Times newspaper that Weinstein attacked her after showing up at her London home. She said she was left feeling disgusted and embarrassed. It was reported this week that London police were investigating a rape allegation against the producer relating to an incident in the 80s. The city's Metropolitan Police confirmed their investigation without identifying Weinstein by name. On Wednesday, Anthony tweeted, "Have just reported an historic crime. Feel sick, so sad." Weinstein has denied any non-consensual sexual conduct with any women. A week ago he was fired from the Weinstein Co., which will now undergo a name change as it struggles to survive the current scandal. Despite widespread predictions that a firefighter works to defend homes from the approaching wildfire in Sonoma, Calif, on Saturday. Jim Reuters nothing more than ash and bones. That grim description of how some victims were found underscores the horror of the wildfires that swept through and devastated Northern California. At least 38 people were killed, including a 14-year-old boy found dead in the driveway of the home he was trying to flee, a 28-year woman confined to a wheelchair, and a couple who recently had celebrated their 75th anniversary. In addition to the lives lost, approximately 5,700 homes and businesses were destroyed, including entire neighborhoods turned into smoldering ruins. Some 220,000 acres, including prized vineyards, have been scorched, and the danger is not over, as some fires are still burning and officials fear the return of winds could spread more catastrophe. Fire season is part of life in California, something that residents know and prepare for after the hot, dry summer months. But the events that began last Sunday have been unprecedented, and so the question that must be confronted is what caused the deadliest week of wildfires in the state's history. Gov. Jerry Brown pointed the finger at climate change. With a warming climate, dry weather and reducing moisture, these kinds of catastrophes have happened and will continue to happen, and we have to be ready to mitigate, and it's going to cost a lot of money, he said last week. No single fire can be specifically linked to climate change, and certainly other factors, such as increased development and logging and grazing activities, are involved. But scientists say there is a clear connection between global warming and the increase in recent years in the severity and frequency of wildfires in the West. Climate change is kind of turning up the dial on everything, expert Leroy Westerling told CBS News. Dry periods become more extreme. Wet periods become more extreme. While California prepares for what promises to be an arduous rebuilding, Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico and other places hit by this year's unprecedented back-to-back hurricanes are still mopping up and, in Puerto Rico's case, just beginning to rebuild. So it would seem to be a natural time to talk about the possible role climate change played in these disasters and about measures the nation should be taking to slow global warming. Instead, we have an administration that refuses even to consider the possibility of a connection, much less talk about solutions. Worse, it is taking. Syracuse quarterback Eric Dungy celebrates with fans after his win over Clemson Friday night in Syracuse, New York. The Orange upset the Tigers 2,724. Adrian at the Clemson Tigers went into the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, New York, Friday night undefeated, but they left crushed after the hopes for a perfect season were dashed. The Syracuse Orange beat the number 2 ranked Tigers 2,724. Clemson had won 12 consecutive games on the opponent's home field, the longest streak in Clemson history. It also ties for the second longest active streak in the nation. Syracuse quarterback Eric Dungy threw for 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. But it was Cole Murphy who put the Orange ahead on the scoreboard when he kicked a tie-breaking field goal in the fourth quarter. Dungy got the team off to a good start. He threw a 23-yard touchdown pass on the opening drive of the game. Afterward, Syracuse coach Dino Babers told reporters, "This is truly one of the moments that you coach for. This is really special." Babers is in his second year with the Orange. It wasn't our night tonight, Clemson coach Dabo Swinney told reporters. "We're not going to be 120, that's for sure. That's not going to happen. This is going to hurt, but you move forward." Adding to Clemson's problems, quarterback Kelly Bryant suffered a likely concussion in the final minutes of the first half. No word yet if he'll have to sit out any games. But Clemson had other issues, as ESPN reports. Clemson, too, was a mess, a shell of the team that held the nation's longest active winning streak. On defense, the Tigers were flummoxed by Syracuse's up-tempo attack. On offense, aside from 2 big runs, a 37-yard touchdown by Tavin Feaster and a 52-yard score by Travis Etienne, there was no consistency. On special teams, it was a nightmare, with 2 missed field goal attempts and a disastrous fake punt that proved to be the last play Clemson would run. The same team that so thoroughly dominated Louisville and Virginia Tech on the road seemed overwhelmed inside the Carrier Dome. The loss, while ruining Clemson's chance at a perfect season, also hurts the Tigers' chances as repeating as national champions. The bright spot is that Clemson won the national championship last year. Caitlin and Joshua Boyle with the 2 children. The Canadian man who was held hostage with his family by the Taliban for 5 years thought his captors were kidding when they told him Donald Trump was president. Joshua Boyle said he learned of Trump's presidency just before he was forced to make a proof-of-life video. It didn't enter my mind that he was being serious, Boyle told the Toronto Star in a wide-ranging interview in the days following his rescue by Pakistani forces last Wednesday. Boyle, who was abducted with his American wife Caitlin Coleman in 2012, also didn't know Justin Trudeau was Canada's Prime Minister until after being rescued. Boyle, Coleman and the 3 young children, all born in captivity, were all freed last week after the couple was abducted. Kitty Wang, Toronto Police Department. A Canadian teen who uses the name Drive. Kitty was arrested after botching a plastic surgery procedure performed illegally in a basement. Kitty Wang, 19, faces aggravated assault charges for offering unlicensed cosmetic services at a Toronto home. Police began investigating Wang when a female patient reported developing a serious infection from a procedure performed by Dr. Kitty in April. The woman then consulted a licensed plastic surgeon and was forced to undergo corrective surgery. Wang was arrested Friday after authorities raided her basement clinic. Investigators believe there may be other victims, police said in a news release. Anyone with information is asked to contact police at 4,168 Santa Rosa, Calif. Even as an unprecedented toll of death and destruction kept mounting, California communities were getting glimpses of heroism, humanity and hope as wildfires burned around them. Firefighters made major gains against most of the blazes on Friday. A lucky few of the nearly 100,000 people who fled the homes got to return, and examples of charity were everywhere, along with a sign that began popping up in more and more places: "The love in the air is thicker than the smoke." Astonishing video released from the fire's hellish first night showed the soldiers' courage of the deputies and firefighters working amid the flames, CBS San Francisco reports. "Go, go, 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 go," the unidentified Sonoma County deputy can be heard yelling in the body camera video released by the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office as he tries to get hesitant drivers to speed out of a town that was already being devoured by flames. He is shown lifting a disabled woman out of her wheelchair and into an SUV to rush her out of town. And he drives through walls of flame looking for more people to help. "And that's just one person," Sonoma County Sheriff Rob Giordano said after showing the video at a news conference. For hours overnight, 15 Sonoma County deputies tried to get people to safety, dodging flying embers and encroaching flames in the process. The tragic bottom line remained. Fire officials and local sheriffs increased the death toll late Saturday night to 40. Meanwhile, there have been 5,700 homes and businesses destroyed. Those numbers make this the most deadly and destructive series of fires California has ever seen. In all, 17 large fires still burned across the northern part of the state, with more than 9,000 firefighters attacking the flames using air tankers, helicopters and more than 1,000 fire engines. "The emergency is not over, and we continue to work at it, but we're seeing some great progress," said the state's Emergency Operations Director, Mark Giarducci. 2 of the largest fires in Napa and Sonoma counties were at least 25% contained by Friday, which marked significant progress, said State Fire Chief Ken Pimlott. But he cautioned that crews would face more gusty winds, low humidity and high temperatures. Those conditions were expected to take hold later Friday and persist into the weekend. Over the past 24 hours, crews arrived from Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, North and South Carolina, Oregon, and Arizona. Other teams came from as far away as Canada and Australia. The influx of outside help offered critical relief to firefighters who have been working with little rest since the blazes started. "It's like pulling teeth to get firefighters and law enforcement to disengage from what they are doing out there," said Barry Bierman, Napa chief for the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Reuters Getty Images. President Trump on Monday falsely claimed that former President Barack Obama and other past presidents didn't call the families of fallen soldiers, before backtracking by saying that's what he'd been told. "The toughest calls I have to make are the calls where this happens. Soldiers are killed. It's a very difficult thing," he said. So the traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls, a lot of them didn't make calls. Trump later backed off. President Obama, I think, probably did sometimes, and maybe sometimes he didn't. I don't know, that's what I was told. New York President Donald Trump can block his critics from following him on Twitter without violating the First Amendment, despite a lawsuit's claims that it violates the Constitution to do so, government lawyers say. Trial attorneys with the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington submitted papers late Friday to a New York federal judge, saying a lawsuit challenging Trump over the issue should be thrown out. The president uses the account for his speech, not as a forum for the private speech of others, the lawyers wrote. And his decision to block certain users allows him to choose the information he consumes and the individuals with whom he interacts, expressive choices that public officials retain the right to make, even when those choices are made on the basis of viewpoint. They say the president's decision to stop some individuals from following him on his 8-year-old @Real Donald Trump account, which has over 40 million followers, is not state action. Public officials, they add, sometimes announce a new policy initiative or make statements about public policy on the campaign trail or in meetings with leaders of a political party. The fact that an official chooses to make such an announcement in an unofficial setting does not retroactively convert into state action the decision about which members of the public to allow into the event, the lawyers said. The lawyers said his Twitter account is not a right conferred by the presidency, but rather is a private platform run by a private company. In a warning that ruling against Trump might threaten the constitutional separation of powers, the lawyers read that courts are prohibited from enjoining the discretionary conduct of the president. The lawsuit was filed in July by the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, and 7 people rejected by Trump after criticizing the president. Jamil Jaffer, the institute's director, said Trump's lawyers were wrong in the legal analysis and to accept the statement that the courts had no say over the issue could have far-reaching and intolerable implications. The president isn't above the law, Jaffer said in a statement. Katie Fallow, a senior staff attorney with the institute, said the argument by government lawyers that Trump's Twitter feed is a personal account is not defensible given that the president routinely uses it for official purposes and both the president and his aides have publicly described the account as official ____. Shutterstock Wheatfield, NY. Authorities say several children and a 76-year-old woman have been treated for injuries sustained when a wind gust sent a bounce house airborne at a western New York event. The Niagara County Sheriff's Office says the inflatable structure was set up at a corn maze in the town of Wheatfield on Sunday when a strong gust of wind lifted it into the air and blew it about 50 feet. Deputies say several children inside the bounce house suffered minor injuries. Police say a woman standing next to it was dragged about 20 feet. She was treated at a Buffalo